Hello everyone, Bag here, and this is Gilgamesh, a free 5-star landing destruction unit who is primarily a reviver for Saber. Here's a 10-minute rundown of everything you need to know about how to use him on your account. His kit revolves around his stacking resource, Interest, which can stack infinitely. Some deja vu here. He starts combat with 3 and gains 1 interest every time an ally other than himself acts, while getting an extra 2 whenever an ally, including himself, uses an ultimate. At the start of combat, Gilgamesh can only use his basic attack, but after getting to 10 interest for the first time, he then is forced to use his skill for the rest of combat. This skill is a very simple blast attack that gives only Gilgamesh 30 death shred, while also not consuming any SP. Every stack of interest also gives him 10% speed, aka 9.7 actual speed. You can stack this as much as you want, but the stacks are cleared every time he uses his skill. He also gains a stacking buff from interest that's basically a permanent 150% crit damage buff for himself. Gilgamesh's ultimate has a very high cost, and acts similar to Saber's, being an AoE hit with 10 random bounces. This high energy cost is supported through his first trace, in which he gains a fixed 30% of the energy cost of an ultimate when that ultimate is used by an ally. He also has a basically permanent 40 ult damage percent from his talent, which is neat, I guess. Gilgamesh also has a joint attack with Saber, in which they gain a counter that goes to 8, going up whenever Saber or Gilgamesh attack. At 8, their joint attack is sent out, doing some damage from Gilgamesh and more damage from Saber in an AoE attack, as well as giving 3 interest to Gilgamesh and 120 fixed energy to Saber, as well as also making her next ultimate deal double damage. Finally, Gilgamesh gives an attack and crit damage buff to the team that mostly scales with each ally's max energy, capping at a max of 120% of each stat with a max energy of 240 or higher. His minor traces include damage percent, attack, and a very solid amount of crit rate, and for leveling priority, everything besides his basic should be maxed. His ult and talent more so, but he has important scalings in every part of his kit. Playing Gilgamesh is rather basic before incorporating Saber. His beginning, forced to use basic state, should just be cleared preferably before if not right after his first turn, and from then on, it's just spamming a 0 SP skill with an ultimate that's nothing more than a big hit of damage. There are 2 core tenets to his gameplay then, with the first one being his energy management. Energy is tricky for Gilgamesh, in being an energy-centric unit without any energy overcapping mechanic. This means you have to be careful with when you ult with allies, as there is nothing protecting you from massively wasting energy if he has or almost has his ultimate. Since Saber has the same energy cap, one ult from her directly leads to 30% of his max energy, which is again fixed and is not affected by ER. While this energy juggling should be a priority, it can of course be overtaken by the context of the fight. So say you're at 7 out of 8 stacks and Saber has her ultimate, pushing an earlier Gilgamesh ult, or intentionally waiting for his next turn to buff up this Saber ultimate, might be a needed sacrifice of energy and or AV, if you need this Saber ult to be buffed over waiting for the next one. The 120 fixed energy from the joint attack is equal to Saber's max energy overflow, so any overflow she already has is equally wasted, meaning on either end, you have to weigh between optimal resource generation and damage frontloading. This 120 energy also can add to Saber's rotation, giving her a potential action advance, or giving her enough energy to more easily instant pop mana bursts after her first turn. This then impacts the pace of the 8 hits for the joint attack, as Saber's turns can have anywhere from 1 to 3 actions, which depend on if that turn is coming from a mana burst pop, or if you have or will get max energy when coming from a natural turn. So every part of both of their kits feeds into each other. It's all rather freeform due to the nature of both of their irregular action values, but it is an important skill to learn to know when that joint attack is coming, so that you can plan for its damage, energy, and for how you want to use a double damage Saber ultimate. The other core tenet to Gilgamesh is his interest stacking. Gaining speed on every ally action is awkward. Essentially, speed matters more the further away your turn is, since then that speed is around to affect more spent action value. If his turn is about to come up, giving him an extra 100 speed will barely make a difference, especially compared to how much it would do for him if he had it for his entire turn. So on top of his energy considerations, plan around your ally abilities to make the most of this, although this only needs to be in the min-max consideration if that extra speed is actually doing something over the course of the fight. These are, in all, rather small optimizations. Gilgamesh is a unit who very much so plays himself. The real complication is in not wasting anything on Saber and her awkward energy rotations and action advances, but if you're already used to playing her, then adding Gilgamesh won't be too much more difficult to play around. I'll plug here to subscribe. If you want to know more about the new summer variants for Aventurine and Robin in a longer format than this, then sub to stick around. Okay, back to the vid. Gearing Gilgamesh is very straightforward. For sets, Scholar is the main one, although Genius is also solid when paired with Mortanax and Quantum Weak enemies. Eagle is always a fun and usable alternative, but Scholar is the default. For Planars, he and Saber have a new one that's made for them, but if you don't want to farm it, then Izumo or City are usable with Saber, or Sasota works with or without her. For main stats, Crit Body, Lightning Lightning over Attack Orb, then it's usually Attack Boots and usually Attack Rope. ER Rope is worse than you would think, since the bulk of his energy gain is fixed energy from his first trace, while Speed Boots is less important, with him getting so much from interest. But scenarios will exist where either will be needed for a higher breakpoint or an extra ult, so they should be considered, but attack on both is the default. For substats, there really isn't anything too notable to aim for. Again, speed breakpoints don't really exist with Gilgamesh's constantly fluctuating speed, so just aim for a solid crit ratio, and afterwards prioritize crit damage over attack as always. For light cones, let's not stall and talk about his quote-unquote free signature. It gives 18% attack, 10% ER, 72% ult damage bonus, and a 3-turn buff after ulting or entering combat that gives the team 24 crit damage. As I mentioned, ER is weirdly less of a priority for him, since a lot of his energy gain is fixed, and the team-wide buff is rather underwhelming to say the least. Like Archer's signature, this has definitely been balanced around being free. It is his best option, but he is far from reliant on it to actually function. I would not recommend directly pulling for this, especially in comparison to his E1, but you can treat it as a nice bonus for him if you do end up getting to 200 pulls. But unless if you are specifically committed to him, if you feel obligated to use more pulls to get this, don't. It's a pretty tame signature with very viable competition. That competition firstly includes Saber's Sig, so if you have this to give him, then it's very close to his own Sig. But when playing both of them together, Saber should be the one holding it, of course. The real alternative is, of course, Aeon. Unless if you have someone else using it, there's no reason not to give it to him. It's just that simple. Otherwise, the Battle Pass option is solid if you, for some reason, have high copies of it. And Finon's signature also gets a shout out for increasing his base speed, giving an extra 1.2 speed per interest. But still just stick to Aeon if you can. If you do have nothing else and Aeon is being used, then the Moles Welcome You or Secret Vow are the last resort options. For teams, he has two. First off, he is made for Saber. The third slot here is either RMC or Mortanax. Mortanax is generally preferred through being able to fully buff both damage dealers, on top of all of his other benefits, but RMC is able to keep a very uniquely fast pace of action advances due to the very high volume of energy, helping Saber loop her ultimate much more quickly. You can also use any other generic amper here, but these two are the main preferred choices. From there, the sustain should hopefully be Ho-Ho, which should be obvious with how energy hungry this team is. So definitely put her here if you can, or go anyone else if not. This team has Gilgamesh's most impactful role. It might not be at the very top of the meta, but it's still more than solid enough to clear with Gilgamesh as by far the most important teammate here to give to Saber. The other main team for Gilgamesh is with Ashvale and Mortanax, where he works off of their frequent attacks for high interest, while giving tangible buffing and good personal damage through getting 100% death shed for himself. He essentially acts as a trippy replacement, in not really being much better, but instead acting as a way to free her up for your other teams if you want to. I should also note, spoiler warning for the 4.5 beta, that Aventurine and Robin will shake up definitely this team and maybe also the Saber team. But while things are just starting with them, and things definitely will change, it is rather clear that Gilgamesh will be much more contested in this follow-up team slot relatively soon. He does also, again, tip the scales of wanting Ho-Ho here, but here more so, any other sustain will still do fine. I will also mention that you can play him as a carry, and where the basic core is just Mortanax plus Phil with your strongest available generic option, or you can just throw him into the generic Sunday Sparkle core if you want, but this is definitely not what he's made for, and it will be rather underwhelming without good investment. Although, again, spoilers for the 4.5 beta, Summer Robin might be a good upgrade here, but we'll have to wait and see on that point. Finally, for his Eidolons, his E1 gives his 30% death shred to the rest of the team, while giving himself 60% attack and a fixed extra 40 energy on his skill. This is a very solid E1. It's the best single vertical investment upgrade in Saber's team, while also letting Ashvale and Mortanax get to 100% death shred if you want to use him there long term. It's not needed, but if you want his cores to last longer, then it's definitely something to consider getting eventually. His E2 gives him an extra 5 interest at the start of combat and after his ultimate, as well as giving extra multipliers to his skill. This is Both of its effects are solid, but not frankly to the level that you'd want out of an E2. E4 is 20% ER, I mean cool, and E6 gives 20 res pen to the team, extra multipliers to his ult bounces, and when allies use their ultimate, Gilgamesh gains a stacking buff. This stacks up to 3 times and is consumed by his ultimate, each stack giving 100% crit damage. Like with most E6s, I wouldn't say at all that this is worth going for, especially with both potential future teammates to invest into, and current big account upgrades like Mortanax E2. E1 really is the recommended stopping point with Gilgamesh, but go further if you want to as always. And that's everything. Going to the channel member corner just to say that I appreciate every single one of you as always. And with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye!